I always thought sibling rivalry was something you grew out of after high school. Sure, my younger sister Mia was dramatic, selfish, and constantly needed to be the center of attention, but I never imagined she'd cross the one line I thought was sacred, my happiness. I had been dating Ryan for 2 years when he proposed. It wasn't extravagant, just us in our apartment, pizza boxes still on the table, my hair in a messy bun. But the way he looked at me, the softness in his voice when he said he couldn't imagine life without me, that was all I ever wanted. For weeks, I walked around floating, already picturing our small spring, wedding surrounded by friends who had actually stuck by me through thick and thin. But then came my mother's birthday dinner. A family gathering, crowded with aunts, uncles, cousins, and Mia. She was in one of those glittery dresses that screamed, "Notice me," sipping her wine like she owned the room. I didn't even mean to mention the engagement, but when my mom asked about wedding dates, I couldn't help smiling and saying spring. That was the moment Mia's eyes lit up, like a switch flipped inside her. She hugged me too tightly, whispered congratulations in a tone that made my stomach twist, and then turned to Ryan with that too bright smile of hers. "When do I get to meet him?" she asked. I should have known better. At first, I convinced myself it was harmless. Mia always exaggerated her interest in people just to stir drama. But a week later, Ryan came home laughing, phone in hand. "Your sister's crazy," he said, showing me a string of messages from a random Instagram account. Fake name, no profile picture, but the writing style? It screamed Mia. "Hey, I think we've met before. You remind me of someone," the messages read. Ryan had replied with polite confusion until the account started dropping hints about destiny and lost soulmates. Then he blocked it. We laughed it off that night, mocking her desperation. I told myself it was just another one of Mia's attention stunts. But Mia doesn't stop once she gets an idea in her head. 3 weeks before my wedding, I got the flu. Fever, chills, the works. Ryan was supposed to be at his brother's golf tournament, and I stayed curled up in bed with tissues and tea. Then my phone buzzed. It was my best friend, who happened to live near Mia's apartment complex. "Why is Ryan's Tesla parked in the visitor spot?" My stomach dropped. I tried calling him. No answer. In a daze, I grabbed the spare key Mia had once given me for emergencies and drove straight there. The door opened, and what I saw knocked the air out of my lungs. Mia, curled up on the couch, head in Ryan's lap, his hand in her hair, both of them half-dressed. She looked up, eyes wide, already summoning fake tears. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. He just reminds me so much of Ethan." My fiancé didn't even try to explain. Her words sliced deeper than the sight of them together. Ethan, the name again. The phantom she had been obsessing over for years, her so-called one true love. Some guy she hooked up with once at a college party, who ghosted her the next morning. To Mia, that 30-minute mistake was the love story of her life. To me, it was the excuse she used every time she decided to torch someone else's happiness. I stood frozen in the doorway, my body burning with fever, but also something sharper, colder. Rage. Ryan didn't jump up. He didn't try to explain or defend himself. He just sat there, staring at me like a stranger who had been caught in a lie too flimsy to bother covering up. "Mia, you're unbelievable," I hissed, my voice breaking halfway between fury and heartbreak. She clutched at her chest, eyes glistening like a bad soap opera actress. "You don't understand. Losing Ethan destroyed me. Seeing Ryan just brought all of that back." That was her narrative. Always was. She didn't destroy people, her pain did. She wasn't selfish, she was tragic. And every time, someone, my parents, an old friend, even neighbors, ended up comforting her while she left chaos in her wake. But not this time. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even cry. I just set the key on the coffee table, turned on my heel, and walked out. Fever be damned, my body moved with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. By the time I collapsed onto my own bed, one truth rang in my head like church bells: Mia would never stop. If she couldn't have someone, she would ruin them for everyone else. And Ryan? He wasn't worth salvaging. But I wasn't going to let Mia win. The next morning, I opened my phone, heart pounding. My thumb hovered over Instagram. There he was, Ethan, still posting videos of his golden retriever, still living 3 hours away, still completely unaware that my sister had been building a whole mythology around his name. We'd followed each other for years, occasional likes, nothing more. I stared at his latest post, a selfie in his clinic uniform with the caption, "Another day helping people heal." And I knew. This wasn't about revenge on Ryan. He was already gone. This was about Mia. About showing her what real loss felt like. So I sent Ethan a DM. Simple. Direct. Almost reckless. "Hey, this is weird, but my sister used to have a thing for you in college. She just ruined my engagement. Want to help me ruin her life?" I expected silence. Maybe a polite, no thanks. But 12 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Wait, Mia? The girl who showed up at my mom's house 2 years ago, pretending she was my girlfriend? I'm in." I sat up so fast I nearly knocked the tea off my nightstand. My heart hammered in my chest. She actually did it. She had driven all the way to his hometown, wormed her way into his mother's life, and spun her fantasy like it was reality. And now Ethan knew. We spent hours messaging that day. He sent me screenshots, videos, even an audio clip of his bewildered mom saying, "She seems so sincere, dear. I thought you were back together." I almost laughed, except my anger tasted too bitter. Mia wanted to live in a fantasy? Fine. I'd write the ending for her. Ethan and I made a plan. The plan wasn't about humiliation in public, not at first. It was about control. For once, Mia wouldn't get to twist the narrative and cry her way into forgiveness. She'd have to watch, helpless, as her dream unraveled in front of her. Ethan and I decided to make our debut at the one place we knew Mia couldn't avoid, my dad's birthday lunch. In our family, skipping it was practically a sin. Every year, my parents booked a big table at their favorite Italian restaurant, ordered way too much food, and used it as an excuse to parade whatever drama we were in the middle of. Perfect. The Friday before, I picked Ethan up at the bus station. Until then, we'd only seen each other through carefully curated photos. In real life, he was even worse, for Mia, that is. He had the kind of smile that drew people in without trying, broad shoulders from his physical therapy work, and that quiet confidence of someone who didn't need to prove himself. The second he hugged me hello, I felt it in my bones. Mia wouldn't stand a chance. On the drive, we rehearsed like actors before opening night. What to say, how to laugh at each other's jokes, when to casually touch hands. We weren't lying, not really. We were just accelerating a chemistry that was already there. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Ethan asked, glancing at me as we stopped at a red light. I thought about Ryan's vacant eyes, about Mia's trembling voice as she invoked Ethan's name like some sacred relic. I clenched my jaw. More than ready. Saturday came faster than I expected. I wore a new dress, nothing flashy, just elegant enough to say, "I'm doing better than you think." My heart pounded as we walked into the restaurant together, Ethan's hand warm in mine. The moment we stepped inside, I saw her. Mia was laughing too loudly at something my uncle said, glass of Prosecco, already half empty. But when her eyes landed on us, the laughter choked in her throat. "Everyone," I said brightly, squeezing Ethan's hand as if we were already inseparable, "this is Ethan." The name hit her like a slap. Her wine glass slipped in her hand, spilling onto the white tablecloth. She scrambled to cover her shock with a smile, her cheeks blotchy red. "Wow," she stammered. "What a coincidence." Ethan smiled politely, the perfect gentleman. "Hi, Mia. Good to see you again." It was surgical, precise. Watching the panic flash in her eyes was like watching a glass castle crack down the middle. My parents, oblivious, jumped to welcome Ethan, asking questions, offering him bread, treating him like my newest victory. And every second Mia's knuckles whitened around her glass, her mouth twitching between fake smiles and barely contained outrage. I leaned into Ethan, brushing his arm, laughing too freely. He played along flawlessly, telling a story about his dog stealing a steak off the counter. My family roared with laughter. Mia stayed silent, her jaw tight. I posted a story on Instagram right then, a photo of our clasped hands resting on the table. I knew she'd see it later. I wanted her too, and for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't the one being played. Mia's silence at that table was louder than all the laughter around us. She fiddled with her fork, tapped her heel against the floor, and forced smiles that looked more like grimaces. Every time Ethan leaned closer to me, every time his hand brushed against mine, I could see her chest tighten like she was physically in pain. And I loved every second of it. I didn't even have to exaggerate. The chemistry between Ethan and me was real, that easy rhythm where you don't have to pretend you're interested, because you actually are. He asked my dad about his latest fishing trip, helped my mom pour wine for the table, and cracked jokes that made my cousins snort into their napkins. Meanwhile, Mia sat there, barely holding it together, like she was the extra at a play where she thought she'd been the star. Finally, she snapped. "So," Mia said, her tone just a little too sharp, "how did you two meet?" I could practically hear the subtext, "This is MY's story. You don't get to rewrite it." I smiled sweetly, squeezing Ethan's hand. "Through mutual friends," I said casually. "We'd followed each other online for years, but only recently started talking. Guess timing really is everything." Ethan added smoothly, "Yeah, sometimes you don't realize the right person's been there the whole time." Mia's jaw dropped a fraction before she caught herself. She laughed, high-pitched and forced, like glass cracking under pressure. "Wow, how sweet." The rest of the family just nodded approvingly, oblivious to the war brewing under the table. When dessert came, Mia excused herself and disappeared into the bathroom. I knew exactly what she was doing, regrouping, plotting, trying to regain control. But she'd underestimated me. For once, I wasn't going to back down or soften the blow for her. Ethan leaned closer. "She's losing it," he whispered with a grin, his breath brushing my ear. And God help me, my stomach flipped. This had started as revenge, but sitting there with him, I couldn't deny that part of me actually wanted this to be real. When Mia returned, her lipstick was freshly reapplied, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. She sat down, looked directly at Ethan, and said, "Funny seeing you again after all these years." My parents perked up. "Oh, you two know each other?" Mia hesitated for half a second too long. "Briefly," she said, her voice airy. "From college. Nothing important." Ethan tilted his head, polite but firm. "Yeah, we met once. Didn't really click back then." The color drained from her face. She covered it with a laugh, but I saw it, the sting, the humiliation. He had reduced her entire tragic love story to a footnote, and there was nothing she could do about it. As the lunch wound down, Ethan walked me to my car, his hand still in mine. I caught Mia watching us from across the parking lot, her arms crossed, her expression a storm she couldn't contain. For once, it wasn't me leaving broken. It was her. I slid into the driver's seat, heart still racing. This was supposed to be about teaching her a lesson, but I could feel something shifting inside me. The way Ethan looked at me didn't feel staged. The way I laughed with him didn't feel fake. And as we drove away, Mia standing small and seething in the rearview mirror, I realized something terrifying. This revenge was starting to feel like something else entirely. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed every detail of the lunch in my head, Mia's forced laugh, Ethan's casual dismissal of her epic love story, the way his hand felt steady in mine. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like Mia's shadow. I felt like myself. But the glow of victory came with a twinge of fear. What if I was crossing a line? What if I was becoming just like her, manipulative, cruel, obsessed with winning? I sat on my bed staring at my phone, Ethan's number glowing on the screen, my thumb hovering. Before I could overthink it, I typed, "Thank you. Today meant more than you know." His reply came 2 minutes later, "Same here. Coffee tomorrow." I should have hesitated, but I didn't. The next afternoon, we met at a small cafe downtown. No audience, no family, no Mia lurking in the corner. Just us. I expected the conversation to be awkward without the act to guide us, but it wasn't. He told me about his work with injured athletes, his ridiculous golden retriever named Max, his obsession with terrible 80s action movies. I found myself laughing until my stomach hurt, the kind of laughter I hadn't felt since before Ryan. Halfway through my latte, I realized I wasn't pretending anymore. Ethan must have seen it too, because when he walked me to my car, he didn't stage a goodbye for anyone's benefit. He just looked at me with that easy smile and said, "I'm glad we're doing this." And I knew he wasn't talking about revenge. Of course, Mia wasn't about to let go so easily. By Monday, she was blowing up my phone. First with casual texts, "Hey, how's Ryan?" Then more pointed, "Who was that guy at Dad's birthday?" Finally, the classic guilt trip, "I can't believe you do this to me. You know what Ethan means to me." I ignored her. For once, silence felt like power. But Mia doesn't survive without attention. And when she realized I wasn't giving to her, she escalated. Screenshots started popping up in the family group chat, old photos of her and Ethan's mom, captions like, "Reunited with my future family red heart." She was trying to rewrite the story again, to drag everyone back into her fantasy. Except this time, Ethan was on my side. He sent me a video of his mom rolling her eyes at one of Mia's old visits. "That girl was strange," she said, choosing her words carefully. She kept insisting I call her sweetheart. Honestly, I was relieved when she stopped showing up. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my tea. For years, Mia had held Ethan's ghost over my head like a sword. And now here was proof. He never cared, his family never cared, it had all been in her imagination. But even as I celebrated, I couldn't shake the thought. If I let myself fall for Ethan, was I just continuing her story instead of ending it? When I asked him that later, he looked at me steadily. "You're not her. You don't take, you build. Don't let her make you believe otherwise." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. Still, I knew Mia wasn't finished. Not yet. She never leaves a stage without one last desperate act. And when it came, it was worse than I ever imagined. It happened at my parents' house the following weekend. A Sunday lunch, another family tradition Mia never missed. I knew she'd show up armed, not with weapons, but with her endless theatrics. Ethan and I decided to go together again. As we walked up the driveway, his hand brushing mine, I felt a rush of nerves. Not because of Mia. I was ready for her, but because this was starting to feel real. Too real. Inside, the usual chaos. Cousins running around, my mom shouting about the roast in the oven, my dad already pouring wine. And there, in the center of it all, Mia. She was wearing a low-cut red dress, her makeup flawless, like she was attending a gala instead of Sunday lunch. When she saw us walk in, she froze, then plastered on a smile, so wide it nearly cracked her face. "Ethan," she squealed, like they were old friends reuniting. She actually pushed past me to hug him. Ethan, bless him, barely touched her shoulder before stepping back. "Hi, Mia," he said flatly. The tension was thick enough to choke on. My mom, oblivious as ever, just clapped her hands together. "Well, it looks like everyone knows each other. Isn't that lovely?" Mia wasted no time. She launched into some rehearsed speech about destiny, about how some people are just meant to cross paths again and again. She kept glancing at Ethan, waiting for him to nod, to validate her fantasy. He didn't. He just sipped his wine, his arm draped casually around my chair. I thought she'd give up. I underestimated her. Halfway through dessert, Mia stood up dramatically, spoon clattering against her plate. "Fine," she said, her voice trembling. "If no one's going to tell the truth, I will." The whole table went silent. "Ethan and we've had a connection for years," she declared, eyes darting between me, Ethan, and my parents. "We were in love once, and honestly, I still love him." Seeing him here with her, she jabbed a finger in my direction. "It's torture." Gasps around the table. My aunt dropped her fork. My dad muttered something under his breath. My mom looked like she was about to faint. I braced myself. This was it. The meltdown. But before I could even open my mouth, Ethan stood. Calm, steady, unshakable. "With respect, Mia, that's not true," he said, his voice carrying through the room. "We met once at a party. You showed up at my mom's house years later, uninvited, pretending we were together. It made her uncomfortable. It made me uncomfortable. And I let it go, because I figured you'd grow out of it. Clearly you haven't." The silence that followed was electric. My cousins stared wide-eyed. My dad raised his eyebrows in stunned approval. And Mia? She crumbled. Her face went crimson, her hands shaking, as she tried to laugh it off. "He's just saying that because she told him to," she spat, pointing at me again. "She's manipulating him. She always manipulates." "No," Ethan interrupted, firm this time. "This is me. I like her." He reached down, took my hand in his, and said again, "I like her." That was the moment. The exact second Mia realized her script was gone, her stage ripped away, her audience turning on her. She grabbed her purse, muttered something about not feeling well, and stormed out the door. No one followed her. And as I sat there, Ethan's hand still wrapped around mine, I realized two things at once. I had finally won, and I wasn't sure if it was revenge anymore. After Mia stormed out, the room didn't quite know how to breathe again. My mom tried to change the subject, fumbling with coffee cups, but the damage had been done. For once, Mia hadn't managed to spin the story in her favor. She had been exposed raw and undeniable. I should have felt only triumph. But as Ethan and I drove home later, silence hanging between us, a different feeling crept in, relief. Relief that it was over, yes, but also relief that someone else had finally said aloud what I had been carrying for years. Mia is not the victim. She is the storm. Sorry if that was too much, Ethan said finally, his hand drumming the steering wheel. I turned to him, stunned. Too much. You saved me. You shut her down in a way no one ever has. He smiled, that quiet, unbothered smile that made my chest feel too small. Guess it was about time. The next week was the calmest I'd ever experienced with my family. No dramatic texts from Mia, no late-night guilt trips, no sudden appearances at my apartment. She'd gone silent, which was scarier in a way. Silence meant planning. Silence meant waiting for the next strike. But I didn't let it consume me. Not this time. Ethan and I started seeing each other more often. Dinners, walks with his golden retriever, even just evenings on the couch watching his ridiculous 80s movies. Every time he looked at me, it felt like he was peeling away another layer of the bitterness Mia had built inside me. And yet, I couldn't shake the thought. Was I just using him to hurt her? Was this still about revenge? Or was it something else now, something I was too afraid to name? The answer came sooner than I expected. One night, after a long day, I found myself laughing so hard I had tears in my eyes. Ethan had been trying and failing to teach me some exercise routine he swore by, and I collapsed onto the floor in a fit of giggles. He dropped beside me, equally breathless, and just looked at me. Not with pity, not with lust, with something softer, something terrifyingly real. You know, he said quietly, I agreed to this because I thought it'd be funny. Torture your sister a little. But now, I think I would have said yes anyway. Just to meet you. The room went still. My heart pounded. This wasn't part of the plan. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just sat there, staring at him, the walls I'd built around myself starting to crack. And in that silence, I realized Mia had lost in the only way that mattered. Not because I'd stolen her fantasy, but because I'd stopped living in her shadow. But Mia wasn't done yet, and her next move would make sure no one forgot her name. I should have known Mia wouldn't accept defeat quietly. She'd been humiliated at my dad's birthday, ignored in the family group chat, and forced to watch Ethan choose me in plain sight. For Mia, silence was never surrender. It was a pause before the explosion. The explosion came 2 weeks later. I was at work when my phone buzzed with a notification, then another, and another. By the time I unlocked the screen, my stomach had already turned to stone. Mia had tagged me in a post. The photo, Ryan, my ex-fiancé, smiling at some bar, his arm slung lazily around Mia's shoulder. The caption, sometimes the heart finds its way back to where it belongs. True love never dies, red heart, sparkles. My hand shook so badly, I nearly dropped my phone. Within minutes, the comments flooded in. Acquaintances congratulating her, distant relatives leaving heart emojis, mutual friends asking if this was for real. And the worst part? She knew I'd see at work, where I couldn't immediately scream or smash something. I excused myself to the bathroom, locked the stall, and sat on the cold tile floor. I wanted to vomit. Not because I still loved Ryan, that ship had sunk the moment I found him with her, but because this was Mia's specialty. Rewrite the story. Make herself the heroine. Twist the knife until I bled all over again. I didn't cry. I didn't text her. I just took a screenshot and sent it to Ethan. His reply came fast. She's desperate. Don't let her win. Dinner tonight. That night, sitting across from Ethan in the soft glow of a little Italian restaurant, I felt the fury settle into something sharper. She thinks she's won, I said, stabbing my fork into a pile of pasta. She thinks I'm sitting at home crying while she parades him around. Ethan leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. Then don't give her that satisfaction. She feeds on your reaction. Cut her off. Live your life. With or without me, you've already beaten her. But that last part, with or without me, stuck in my head all night. Because the truth was, I didn't want life without him anymore. Somewhere between plotting against Mia and laughing over burnt garlic bread, I'd stopped seeing Ethan as a tool for revenge. He was becoming something else. something terrifyingly real. When he walked me to my car, I couldn't stop myself. I kissed him. Not staged, not planned, not for Mia's benefit. Just for me. And for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I felt free. Of course, freedom doesn't last long when your sister is Mia. The very next day, she showed up at my door. She didn't knock. She never knocked. I opened the door to find Mia standing there, eyes bloodshot, hair unbrushed, clutching her phone like it was a weapon. "You think you've won," she hissed, shoving the screen toward me. It was the photo of her and Ryan again, plastered all over her socials. "He chose me. Ethan doesn't love you. He never will. You're just borrowing him until he realizes." For the first time in my life, I didn't flinch. I didn't yell. I didn't defend myself. I just looked her straight in the eye and said, calm as stone, "Mia, Ethan was never yours. He never wanted you. And the only reason Ryan's with you now is because you begged for leftovers." Her face cracked, anger, pain, disbelief colliding all at once. She opened her mouth to spit something venomous, but behind me, Ethan's voice cut through. "Actually," he said, stepping into view, "I think you should leave." Mia's eyes darted between us, wide and wet. "You're letting her manipulate you," she whispered. "She's always done this. She takes what's mine." Ethan shook his head slowly. "No, she's not taking anything. She's building something. With me. And you're just chasing ghosts." Mia's lip trembled. For a second, I thought she might collapse right there on my doorstep. But instead, she spun on her heel, storming down the hall with her heels clacking like gunshots. I closed the door, my whole body trembling. Not with fear, but with release. Years of being her scapegoat, her backup plan, her target, gone in one slam of the door. Ethan wrapped his arms around me, steady and warm. "You okay?" he asked softly. I leaned against his chest, letting the tension drain out of me. "For the first time in years," I whispered, "I think I actually am." And that's when I realized Mia had never really ruined my life. She'd only delayed it. Because standing there, in Ethan's arms, I finally felt something my sister would never understand. Not revenge. Not victory. Love.